You know, my wife hates onions. How can you hate onions? I absolutely love the little buggers. So the problem with onions for us is that when we do a recipe that calls for, a half an onion or so forth, the other half just kind of hangs out and rots around the house. I find it in the crisper tray that's almost unidentifiable. I tried leaving one out on the counter the other day, and it just completely dehydrated into just like black onion flakes. Not delicious at all. By the way, these are Vidalia onions. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. My mom used to get these when she was a kid in South Carolina and just loves them. And they are so sweet, you could probably eat them like an apple. Though I'm not gonna do that. To fix the problem of never having the right amount of onions around, I was wondering if we could freeze dry these little buggers. Now, I did turkey and noodles the other day, and when I freeze dried it to make a bunch of different meals, the smell of the onions within the turkey and noodles kind of filled up the house with a freeze dryer. So I think we're gonna really end up with some strong smells out of this onions when we put them in the freeze dryer. Now normally I have a fan that runs and blows on our oilless pump to keep it cool. I don't think that's necessary. I know it gets warm, and if I can keep some cold air blowing across, the room stays cooler, which I think helps shorten up the batch time for the different freeze-dried things that we do. But this time, I think I'll turn the fan around and blow the air out the window and try to keep the smell down in the house and just see how strong freeze-dried onions is actually gonna be. Now my plan is to get that nasty skin off of these little buggers, quarter them, and throw them through the salad shooter. I don't know if you ever had a salad shooter, but we did when we were growing up. I remember just whatever I could chuck in there and shoot out on the salad was so much fun. I thought they were long gone, but it turns out you can still get them on Amazon. I'll put the link below because it actually turns out to be a fantastic freeze-dry tool. A special thanks to Brian over at Live Life Simple for the salad shooter idea. You kept my pain to a minimum. Only took like 2 minutes to shoot all the onions. Great one, thanks Brian. So I'm going to take the salad shooter, shoot these little onions directly out on the tray, and then I'm going to throw them in the freeze dryer and see how they freeze dry. I think it'd be great when I have a recipe like those turkey and noodles that calls for onions, just to add freeze dried onions to them, let them rehydrate. The taste would be the same, but I wouldn't have to worry about finding a half of a rotten onion in the bottom of my crisper tray. So let's jump to it and see how it works. So they ended up taking about 17 hours, came out crunchy, flaky, light, just absolutely perfect. We ended up with about 16 of these little packets, which hold about a half an onion apiece, which I thought was a good measurement for a recipe. If you're dropping into a stew or something that calls for a whole onion, we could just throw a couple of these in. So as far as the smell goes, it was a lot less than I thought it was. I don't know whether it was the fan blowing the air out the window or whether these onions just don't smell real bad when you freeze dry them, but it was very tolerable. You could smell some onions down in the basement, but the rest of the house smelled just fine. Now that takes me to cleanup. You're definitely going to want to clean out your freeze dryer anytime you do a food that has a strong smell like onions. I like using just a vinegar and water solution. 1 cup of vinegar to 4 cups of water is a really good mixture for me. You can add more or less vinegar depending on what you prefer. You're going to want to wipe down that drum real well, clean out that drain line. That drain line just has a tendency to get nasty anyway, and it's nice to see it get all nice and cleaned out. You can also just replace the little bugger if it gets real bad. Now you're going to want to get the trays all wiped down and in between. Now I came across this really cool little brush to get in between the trays I really like. I'll throw a link to this down in the description because it's really come in handy, especially after candy. The caramel or so forth that kind of gets stuck in between there and you can't quite reach it. So this is a great little tool to use and really cheap. Well, if there's anything else you'd like to see us freeze dry, throw it down in the comments and we'll give her a whirl. If you haven't already, like and subscribe, and we'll just keep freeze drying whatever we can get our hands on.